without
I
getting
don't know
crazy
about it. I
about
know
when we
you're
cut trees in the house. Thank you, everyone, for being here. First order of business today will be the adoption of the agenda. Everybody, I assume, has seen it. I would entertain a motion to adopt that.
And is the adoption of the agenda as published.
Is there a second?
The second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of our last meeting, which took place way back in August 27th. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Does everyone agree that those look good? If so, can I have a motion to approve?
Make the motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All righty. Section 1501 of the zoning ordinance requires that this committee elect a new chairman annually. And I would entertain a motion to nominate someone.
Second.
Are there any other nominations?
Nomination be clippers. Second.
All in favor of either motion? Aye.
Yep.
I think. All right, the reason we're really here is to revisit the tree ordinance. There is much about our ordinance which is not necessarily compatible with other things that the city has adopted, and some things that just simply aren't workable. So this is the reason that we're going to go through this, see if we can't come up with something better. You all have a copy in front of you of the current ordinance. And I say ordinances, it's actually consisted of two ordinances. One, which was the protection of trees within the city. And then there was another subsequent ordinance which dealt with native plants, which happened a couple of years later. Is that in this, what we got here? Yeah.
The one with the native shrubbery. I
Yeah.
don't know if that was incorporated into the,
It got, in the codification process, it got incorporated.
okay.
I just was wondering if it was in the original, if we had a copy of it. I do have a copy.
I can run it off real quick if you want to.
Does anybody feel like they need a copy of it? As I say, it is part of the ordinance when it got codified, so.
See it in the.
All right, well, I'll tell you what. It's ordinance number 1406. I got a copy here if you want to run it off.
Okay.
Getting back to the question I started earlier about what prevails. If you all look at section 9, penalties for violation, 9A. It says, except as otherwise provided herein, any violation of this ordinance Subject the applicant and contractor to a fine not to exceed $1,000 per violation, et cetera, et cetera. If you go online, the Muni code, and see what is on there, that doesn't exist.
Which one are you looking at, the 1201 or?
1201, yeah. So that's just one thing that we're going by that, but it's not online. So if the Muni code prevails, then we're doing something wrong there. At any rate.
And
More,
is that a separate ordinance, or is that part of what we're talking about?
it's part of what we're talking about.
Okay,
Yeah, it's part of the tree ordinance.
okay.
Again, I think what's passed by the council would prevail, but I think we ought to get a different ruling from our legal counsel and city attorney.
Well, I
So
think
it
we
will
need
be
that and we
included
need
in
to
our
fix it.
new ordinance that we're.
Our
going
new
to
ordinance
present.
is gonna fix it.
Okay,
I'm almost, I have looked at so much tree information over the last month and additional ordinances from other cities and what have you. I'm almost at the point where I would like to just throw out what we have and start over from scratch.
let's do it. Let's do it. She said.
Because timing what you do.
Historically,
So I better start.
if there's ever a conflict between two ordinances, the most restrictive applies. That's-
Okay, that would make this the most restrictive and it's the one that really was passed. So we'll go on that basis for the time being. You agree?
So Dan, do you really want to start over? Is
I'm
that-
meaning that way. Some of the things that we're missing. Thank you.
Oh, your original, she might have left. We'll grab it when you go.
Oh, she's got two, okay. All right, just, well, 1201 and 1406 are both ordinances as passed by the city council. They were merged when the codification happened, and they now appear as one ordinance online.
Were there two of these or just one page?
There's a
Flip side.
Oh,
Some of what we're missing, I think we need. And we need a better definition of, what our ordinance is, all, what we're thinking. What the city is trying to achieve as far as, whereas the city wishes to establish appropriate guidelines as to protect native shrubbery, et cetera. This can go into greater depth as to why we're trying to protect the trees and what it means when we lose trees. One of the things that we don't address in our ordinance, but we do participate in otherwise, is the Firewise Community Program. For those who don't know what it is, that's, this developed out of the problems that have been occurring all over the country, not the least of which is, we had a problem 3 years ago right across the street, but Gatlinburg, Paradise, California, Colorado, Pacific Palisades. Firewise is a program managed by the National Fire Protection Association that teaches people how to adapt to living with wildfire and encourages neighbors to work together and take action. It was begun in 1985 as a concept known as the Wildland Urban Interface, WUI, where mankind is encroaching on Mother Nature, frankly. Where, and it's something we're doing here, we're trying to build in Sky Valley. We butt up to a national forest. We're participating in that as a city, but we're not participating in that with respect to this tree ordinance. So I think we need to incorporate what this program is all about into our ordinance. So that we're, protecting ourselves from potential wildfires. Another problem we have with our ordinance is that we've tried to create something that Jim himself has said is unworkable as far as, you can clear the footprint of your property and no more than 25% from that point forward. If you've cut 25% of your trees, that's it, you're done, no more. That's not workable. Trees grow, trees die, plans change. What most cities are doing and what I've been seeing in all these other ordinances I'm looking up is they're establishing a percentage of canopy that the city is trying to maintain. Therefore, if you're maintaining that percentage of canopy within your property, you can continue to cut trees. Tony finds a tree he wants to cut down 10 years from now. The way our ordinance is written, if he cut 25% of his property before, he can't do that. But if we're working on maintaining a certain percentage of canopy, as trees grow, you can cut them and still maintain that canopy. So it's something that I think is much more workable than what we're doing right now. And feel free to stop me anytime anybody has anything they want to say.
Just a question, do we count trees in the street right away? I mean, it's set back, what, 15 feet or something from the center line? There may be a tree along the edge, is that counted as your tree or not?
When I'm doing permitting, yes, I have to include those, but I reach out to get some concurrence from Public Works, because they're the ones ultimately, and the city manager. I just had one a couple of days ago, well, yesterday, and there's a huge tree that's, all the roots are exposed, it's on the side of the road, and it's right at the borderline of the right of way and the property line, or the setback. It's a danger to the community, but I called Public Service and they went out and measured it, and I think it was literally, within a matter of a few inches, whether it was right of way or not. But to serve the public good, Public Works decided to go ahead and reach out to our contractor and have them cut that. So to answer your question, yes, I've been using it as including the right of way.
I think it's the right thing to do. Another issue we've got is when trees are being removed. When we've got penalties for removing trees, or we say you just simply can't do it. We've given no consideration to replanting trees and where those trees would have to be replanted, whether it's going to be if you cut down a 200-year-old oak tree and it's got a 24-inch diameter or greater, and we're putting back a 2-inch tree grown in a 15-gallon container, doesn't quite seem equitable. We don't give any consideration for somebody that might want to cut down a tree that is blocking their view, but they've got room to plant another tree elsewhere or 2 other trees elsewhere. Why couldn't we do that? Again, maintaining that same percentage of canopy.
Getting back to the canopy, which, as far as I was concerned, up until now, we hadn't had that much discussion about the canopy until recently. And I've actually been able to persuade some homeowners when they apply for a permit, they want to just cut these trees for the view. And I go out and there's a 60-foot tree, an oak tree, healthy as can be, why would you wanna cut that tree down? It's not a hazard. Just limit up. You've still got the view, and we still have the canopy. And it's, believe it or not, a lot of folks just hadn't even considered that. And so I think it needs to go hand in hand, but the canopy, as you were saying, and I indicated in one of the previous meetings, that 25%, well, that definitely needs to be tweaked, because the canopy is what we're really looking for.
Yep.
Instead of just a thicket of bushes and,
Jim, do we have a device or some sort of mathematical equation that can give you, calculate?
Those things exist.
They what?
They do exist.
They do
but I do
exist.
not have one.
Okay, is it an app or what is it?
There, a simple way to do it is just with Google Maps or Google Earth. And, just doing a rough calculation, but there are actually programs that you can, I'm gonna refine it here, but, the city could participate in a program that actually does a better
So
survey.
it captures the amount of
Yeah.
trees and the
Or,
percentage of
or
county.
you go by, arborists use a formula that if you've got a certain caliper of tree, in other words, what's the diameter of this tree,
Mhm.
and it happens to be a mountain ash, they can tell you what that canopy at maturity is going to wind up being.
Okay,
There are formulas to use there. So yes, there are ways to do it.
okay.
For the longest time, I wasn't aware of any local arborists, and now, as a result of these discussions, I've found two, and they've been up here quite frequently. And they're very knowledgeable about that, so, we can discuss that further with them.
And those arborists probably have sheets of, if you can get into replacement trees and so forth, what those replacement trees should be
Yeah.
to be compatible with our rainforest and so forth. So yes, all these things are available
Okay,
and should be used. A lot of big cities actually put arborists on the staff. We can't do that. We certainly aren't that big.
unless one moves it to the valley. Yeah,
You
yeah,
con them into working for free.
yeah, yeah. Well, we've got other people that do that for free.
We have one in the valley.
We do.
It's, it's right in front of my house. They don't live here. They're in Atlanta, but they are here. I can't remember. I can look them up.
They actually own a house here.
It's
There's one,
by the Booker house or
Yeah,
whatever. It's the one before it, if you're just coming up.
there's one that lives in Dillard that actually, right across from Haas Realty, the trees that were cut in that right away recently. That's how I found out about him, and, but he lives right in Dillard. He's
Yeah.
very accessible. I've got him on the list of not recommended, but potential tree contractors.
Cool. I'm glad to know these people exist up
Do
here.
we have any idea how much an arborist would charge to come and look at a property or a tree?
I haven't asked him, but,
I don't know, but I think that's one
But
of the
if Jim has
things.
capabilities to put in.
well, it depends on the job, on trees.
Can we build that into the tree permit cost?
You're saying that the city would pay for that rather than the homeowner?
No, into the guy who's getting the permit.
Can we build the fact that they should have an arborist? Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm bringing up a lot of things here. I don't imagine for a minute that we're gonna solve all these things today. But this is stuff, what I'm gonna propose is that we come up with the different aspects of this ordinance that we all need to look at, and each person take a section. One person can look into the arborists, and then one person can look into
Firewise.
Firewise, and
Well, I volunteer to work with the arborist, and you're already doing Firewise.
or.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that way, rather than all of us trying to come up with all these different things independently of one another, we each take a section and then we can come back together and put together a more comprehensive ordinance.
Dan, are we incorporating the native plants also into this ordinance, or is that gonna be
Yeah.
separate?
Yeah, that's part of it. You know, there's sections of what we have as an ordinance now that should be maintained.
Okay,
I think we've got to really look at some of the definitions we've got in the ordinance. What's there, I think could be remedy, specimen tree, a tree defined as historical or endangered. That doesn't go very far. There are things like that that we can tweak and other things that should be added. Let's see here.
and for those who are not here today, they get two sections to look at.
Absolutely,
Says that,
absolutely.
expect to spend between $300 and $1,800 on all this.
For an arborist.
Surely there would be
They
stipulations.
charge
because
between
that's crazy for
$175
one
to
tree.
$200.
And do you need an arborist to look at one tree? You know, you can determine,
That's why I'm saying if Jim had the capabilities, at least that would be an option for smaller.
let's see
It
here.
just says the city reserves the right to
Oh, yeah,
require.
part of in our new construction section here, you know, when the footprint of the house moves, all of a sudden they're in violation of the tree ordinance. Well, what if they still got the same percentage of canopy? Why should that be a violation? But just because something, you know, site conditions changed.
Dan, do you think we need to look at the violations also as to what the penalties are?
I do. In fact, I've got a little note here.
Okay,
Penalties, you know, $1,000 a tree. Well, you know, in some cases, trees need to be replaced. Or even if it's not a penalty, if somebody's building a house and there's, you know, they're all of a sudden losing too much canopy, they're gonna have to replace trees elsewhere on the property. That should be based on not just 2 for 1 or what have you, but the caliper of tree. You know, if you, and caliper, by caliper, I'm talking diameter of the tree trunk. If you're replacing, you know, if you're cutting down a tree with a 12-inch caliper and you're replacing it with 2-inch caliper trees, maybe you need 6 trees. Again, not necessarily in the same place, but elsewhere on the property. Or what many cities are doing is if you don't have room on your property to do that, maybe there's a city park you can put those trees in. Again, you're still maintaining the city's canopy. Or somewhere on the right of way, or, you know. Or, you know, a median or something like that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in the same place. We haven't addressed that at all. Yeah, the $1,000 fine, as I was mentioning before, isn't in the codified version.
is that in our fee ordinance? We have a fee ordinance also, Jason.
It just says subject, it's left open, it just subject to judge discretion, which
Okay,
obviously.
so that's for the $1,000 fee, okay, but is it in our fee ordinance?
In the field ordinance, it just, because the judge, it could be up to 1,000. It's written that it's basically the judge's discretion to what he wants to charge.
Okay,
Because there's been times where we might say $1,000 might be excessive, there's some extenuating circumstances. Well, how would you feel, Judge, if we just charge him $500 a tree or $300 a tree? If he says, yeah, he pays that, then he can keep himself, have to come see me. And if he doesn't want to pay it, he can roll the phone.
It's better to leave it in the judge's discretion, Mr. Bowman.
We've learned not to speak on his behalf, you know, like,
Right.
if there's like points, people say, you know, weight points, that's always his call.
Oh, yeah, I have Mayor, I have a copy of the fee ordinance. It's not in the fee ordinance, but it is under penalties, under the ordinance section, but it's not in the fee schedule.
Gotcha, thank you.
Another thing that we haven't addressed in the tree ordinance, and I think we should. Our zoning ordinance requires a buffer between residential and non-residential properties. Doesn't define it very well. Upon any side or rear lot line in any non-residential district except the recreational district, which abuts the residential district, there shall be a dense plant buffer strip at least 6 feet in height and 50 feet in width along the rear and side lot lines abutting the residential properties. In other words, you're gonna build a hotel. Jason lives next door to you on a single-family residential property. You need some buffer between that hotel and that single-family property.
Is that between two houses also, or
No,
just between?
No,
And then
Covered.
the
that's
zoning,
only, that's anything
Covered?
other than residential that abuts a
Okay.
residential.
where is this located?
This is in the zoning
In
ordinance.
the zoning.
What is that, page 25?
It's section 718 of the zoning ordinance.
And what was the buffer again? What was the diameter?
Well, all it does is have the diameters, 6 feet in height and 50 feet in width along the rear and lot line, and side lot lines. But it doesn't define what that buffer should consist of. I think that's something that should be probably addressed
Yeah.
in this other ordinance, in this, what we're calling a tree ordinance, but I think we can probably even refine what we call it.
Typically, it's gonna be a legal cypress or a cryptomeria, something's gonna provide
Yeah.
year-round coverage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And historically, buffer trees are not counted as part of the minimum tree requirement because that's required already. A lot of times, people say, I'm saving all these trees, therefore I can clear cut this. No, that's separate.
Okay.
That's historically how that's been.
And, you know, it hasn't come up much lately, but I think it might. And I think we need to address it before it does.
I agree.
Our ordinance addresses, you know, touches on the value of a tree, but we really haven't defined what the value might be. That's something we should look at.
Does it, Don, does Firewise indicate how much of an area you can go without trees near the plat of your house, the boundaries? of your
Firewise
house?
does address it.
Yeah, okay, what is it? Is it 20 feet or?
I don't know, there's a whole. Let's see where I've got this.
It's gonna be this similar. Well,
There was some problems with that. I was talking.
Would you like to,
Okay, I will come up.
there are zones.
Okay.
Further out to the zones, you know, what you have to have or
Okay,
what
that's
you should clear,
Firewise.
change.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to,
And they're
you've got
not
the
in our,
immediate zone,
okay,
the intermediate zone. And the extended zone.
and that's,
Extended goes 30 to 100 feet out. Oh, up to 200 feet, I'm sorry.
that's not in our building code permits or anything.
Not the Firewise, no.
We did address an emission zone, I think it was, if you called it in there. If you recall. No, I'm not even finding. Well, I'm not even finding it now. I'll leave it.
Yeah, okay, I got you.
You know, as long as we're gonna participate in Firewise, I think it's proven that we do. I think we should incorporate it into this ordinance.
I do too. I know, Dave, that you have brought up the question about our water, storage capabilities in the event of a, forest fire, but we can talk about that another time. That would be part of this ordinance. I assume. That would be in our emergency document that Tony's going to start working on.
Yeah, it's a whole other thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Other than the fact that, the trees that we maintain help keep water.
Yeah, true.
That's what you were talking to, referring to earlier about the fee schedule and the $1,000. It's not in the fee schedule, but it is on the application, on the permit application itself down here.
What does it say?
Says important information, property owner, applicant, contractor must read and sign below, so they have to sign it, so they hopefully read it. The application must be accompanied by a plat or sketch indicating which trees are to be cut, topped, or trimmed. Contractor must provide proof of insurance prior to the issuance of a tree cutting permit unless property owner signs an affidavit accepting full responsibility. The trees to be cut, topped, or trimmed must be clearly marked. Failure to obtain, and this is in bold red, failure to obtain a tree cutting or cutting additional trees not approved by the city will be considered a violation of the city's tree cutting ordinance and will be subject to the owner/contractor of a fine not to exceed $1,000 per tree, as well as replanting requirements as set forth therein. Failure to remove any tree cuttings within 14 days of completion will be considered a violation of the ordinance and will subject the applicant or contractor to a fine of $100 per day. Applicant is responsible for calling City Hall for a final inspection within said 14-day period to avoid these penalties. So it's pretty explicit.
That's not the ton.
No, I know. So we need to make sure it's in there.
When was that permit, was that created in your tenure, or was that
No,
from
this is,
before?
I inherited this.
Okay,
We tweaked it, when we, went and refined the fee schedule. And the only thing different on here is just the amounts.
gotcha.
But as far as that, that was
It's
on.
been around, okay.
Yeah, because I've heard anecdotes going back 20-something years of overall of winding wage, somebody and, $30-something thousand to somebody up on Alex Mountain.
And Ridgeville.
So it's been around.
There is something called the Arborist Standards Document, which can be used to determine what trees are approved and so forth, as far as maintaining our forest. They come up with standards of, this kind of, large trees, what is the canopy, medium trees, small trees, and they outline what are considered large, medium, and small trees.
Is it by planting zones or just in general?
This aspect of it is in general. I mean,
Okay.
if you take a white oak tree, would be considered a large tree. And the canopy at maturity of a white oak tree is gonna be somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,600 square feet.
Wow,
Where and then, medium trees are 900 square feet, small trees are 400 square feet.
that's defined by the diameter of the trunk?
The canopy.
Well, these are what they would be at maturity.
Okay. But you talk about medium and small. What
Trees.
does that mean, trees? What's a small?
Well, again, their list tells you what's a medium.
Oh, we have a
tree.
list, okay.
And, this is something I think we need to follow up and
You want that incorporated in the ordinance?
well, reference to it, not
Okay.
necessarily, not the whole list. This gets into if you're gonna determine what canopy is remaining in a piece of property,
Yeah.
it's gonna depend on what kind of trees are on the property. And,
That do make sense.
and what those trees are gonna wind up being when they're mature, if they're not already. I had information about the programs that help determine.
So Jim, do you think you need an assistant code enforcement officer just for the tree ordinance?
Well, let's get the tree ordinance cleared up first. and then-
Yeah. Ideally, if we come up with a decent ordinance, it might be easier.
Exactly.
For one thing, you don't have to go back 10 years in city records to determine what somebody has done previously.
Yeah. So that's the historian part of the other guy's job. I got
It
you.
could be just an overall records keeper or something.
I think that's Sharon's job, don't you?
City archives. I've got 10 years in my office. That's what we're required.
You found them. I can't
We
believe.
got them
See,
organized.
Tony wants to cut some trees and he did his last cutting 11 years ago.
We have to start from scratch.
It will take you 40 years to cut them all.
That chainsaw blade.
That's
That's
right,
right.
25%.
That's right.
Yeah.
In fact, no, you would never cut them all if
Yeah,
you're doing it by percentage.
diminishing returns on that.
I
Well, Dan, I hate
apologize,
to
I'm
say,
looking
but I
through.
think you're right. I think we do need to start over.
There's just some,
Need to think about it.
I have here the tree ordinance from Brookhaven, just north of Atlanta. It's quite comprehensive. They're a big enough city that they actually probably have an arborist. A lot of these cities, if they don't have an arborist, they have a tree committee.
I think the city of Gainesville's.
Gainesville is one, city of Atlanta, they've got.
But
really-
but again, I think Dan, maybe you or Don mentioned it in the last meetings, the topography here. Not just the canopy, but the 25% with the topography we've got, it's hard, really hard to measure that. And so we need to take that into consideration, because this is obviously an extremely mountainous area versus Atlanta.
Another way to do it, and it's something, again, in Brookhaven, they do this, and other cities do the same thing, is they do a minimum, what they call minimum caliper DBH, diameter at breast height. And what they'll do is just count the tree trunks.
Depends on how tall the person
I was
is.
just gonna say that.
They-
Depends on what
They define that as, 4.5 feet or something like that. That part is defined, but, and a lot of them use that.
Yeah.
But what they're doing is they're taking, okay, let's say we could have a total of, or a minimum diameter of 900 inches. So you've got a tree that's 10 inches and another tree is 10, and this is per acre. So if you've got a fraction of an acre, you take that percentage. But and it may be that we just wanted to, do it that way because it's gonna be a lot easier to count tree trunks than it is to go, checking the canopy.
The canopy's what we're concerned about.
Well, but if you've got the diameter of the tree trunk and those trees develop a canopy,
And if you've trimmed it 3/4 of the way up, doesn't matter.
I don't know about you, but I can't trim my tree 3/4.
You can't, but somebody can climb those trees.
Well,
Yeah, but the crown is gonna have
the crown
the
is,
greatest amount of canopy,
Yeah.
so,
yeah,
it goes up like that, as you know. So if you're just trimming that,
there's nothing that we do is gonna be perfect. well, all we can do is come up with our best and go from there.
Does Raven County have a tree ordinance? Jason?
Not that I could find.
Okay.
Tallulah has one that is very limited. I've forgotten now what it addresses, but it really
It's not,
doesn't deal with what we're trying to deal with here.
you mentioned a subcommittee to P and Z to look at the trees. What would you want that subcommittee to do? And I know we're just talking off the top of our heads right
Yeah, that's all we're gonna be able to do today.
now.
If we did a committee, I think it would have to be at this initial stage to come up with these standards that the city wants to meet. And then the standards would have to come back to this committee to develop an ordinance, which would then be passed to the city council.
Oh, so you're talking just to get this ordinance going, not to keep this subcommittee to help?
It'd be up to you, but unless the committee is gonna go and help Jim on, dealing with each individual permit, what would be the purpose of it?
Well, that's what I was asking. I wasn't sure if you had something going in your brain over there.
I'm thinking out loud.
I got you. I am too.
And none of it is necessarily coherent.
No, I think you're good.
So far, I'm coming up with the things that we haven't done correctly yet, or that I think we could do better.
Remember, the P and Z members have a 3-year commitment, is all I'm gonna say.
I am way over that.
Yeah, but you're getting reelected, so it doesn't matter.
So,
Or 3 years starting from today.
Yeah, anyway, I can find it. But this particular city has they gave people an option of going with the canopy or the caliper of the tree trucks.
Well, I think we have a number of master gardeners who could help us with the native plants and so forth, portion of the ordinance. And I have their names and numbers. They may not answer, but if you want to have that.
Do master gardeners necessarily get into trees?
No, I was talking about the native plant part.
Oh, the native plant.
Yeah.
The laurel,
Uh,
the laurel, the trillium.
Yeah, rhododendron, the rhodies.
But isn't that already outlined here?
I didn't know if you needed it, if you needed more information.
I think it's outlined here.
Okay,
It's just a matter, they can certainly look at it and see if they think it needs to be tweaked.
Yeah.
Strengthened, or
Whatever.
is it too strong, or what have you.
yeah.
Well, I thought that you were suggesting they maintain.
That too, only it's within the city proper, but, I know that we've had quite a big deal. Jason, was that when some people cut down all those roadies that were in between their property and the golf course and all that? Were you here for that? There was a big mess.
I was here for.
Is that what started it all?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let me just read this, just to give you an idea. Again, it's from one of these other ordinances. The intent and goal of these regulations is to ensure that a minimum density of trees is maintained on all properties and that a significant amount of tree canopy coverage and pervious soil area is maintained throughout the city. The density requirement must be met whether or not a property or site had trees prior to the development or any tree removed. So you're gonna develop a property, you might have to plant trees. All properties within the city shall maintain or achieve a minimum tree density of 130 dBH inches per acre. That's option 1. Or a minimum canopy cover of 45%, option 2. in perpetuity. All land development permits must apply one of the metrics to the density or canopy cover calculations. No combination of the two metrics is permitted. So they do it either way, either measuring the tree trunks or calculating the canopy. I was trying to find where.
That DPT, that was diameter by tree or?
It's diameter at breast height,
Oh, breast height, sorry.
yeah, and in their definitions, they define that for me.
Okay, okay.
So, yeah, double D, I think.
Diameter breast height, standard measure of tree size for trees existing on a site. The tree trunk is measured at a height 4.5 feet above the ground. If a tree splits into multiple trunks below 4.5 feet, the trunk is measured at its most narrow point beneath the split.
It's looking more and more like we need an arborist.
Well, an arborist might help us create this.
I would, Ben, I would go back and I would like to reoffer my suggestion. I fear that whatever we do, we're gonna become mired in the thick of thin things here. There are so many, I worry about canopy because I've got like one big tree, you know. I don't know how big it is. And I know I have neighbors who don't have many trees at all, you know, and so I don't know that. I mean, what do you do in a situation like that? At any rate, I just foresee that there will be so many individual cases that have to be considered that we can't write up an ordinance that would cover all of those. So if we wrote an ordinance, you know, we described, just like you said, the objective of our tree ordinance is this. And give Jim Plywood here the opportunity to issue a permit to, you know, in any, you know, somebody wants to cut a tree, he can figure it out, you know, no big deal. But if somebody wants to cut a bunch of trees and there's an issue, instead of getting mired into all of the diameters and the coverage and the canopy, we could simply require the approval of an arborist and say, you know, we would, you know, you have to hire this guy, Mr. Homeowner or applicant, whoever you are, and explain to him what you want, and he will analyze what you can or cannot do based on his experience and our objective. And if we turned it over to him, it would take us out of the decision-making process for 100 different situations. And I think it could be simpler. And, you know, we could start with firewalls, say this is the minimum, you know, what you have to deal with, and just go from there. I think it might make the whole process simpler and just leave it to an expert to decide on an individual basis.
That expert's still gonna base what his decision is on what we come up with for our goals.
Well, you said that there's such a thing as an arborist standard document or something, and I would
Well,
leave it up to
that, you
you.
know, that standard document, you know, talks about what, you know, best practices for how to maintain trees and so on and so, and it deals with how much canopy a given kind of a tree will develop at maturity and that kind of thing. But it does not address how much canopy cover the city wants.
That's what I'm trying to avoid, because I think if you write that down, you're gonna constantly be battling with somebody about what it is, and whether it's over this or under that, or, you know, exactly how it fits. But if the arborist said, in my opinion, the modifications this homeowner wants to make would support your vision or your objective for tree coverage in the city. And if he said that,
But that's where the canopy comes in. What is our objective?
I would write it
Is our objective to,
just like that other one, you know, of substantial of canopy, or whatever it is, to, you know, to maintain the aesthetics and the value and whatever of the area, and let the arborist.
yeah, but you haven't defined what the aesthetics are.
Yeah, I know, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. Because that's,
No, well, yeah, and what you're doing is passing the buck to the arborist,
yeah, but he's the professional.
but
He's gotta base it on something.
he's got to base it on something. You know,
Well,
But I agree with you, it's gotta be a simplified process, otherwise I think we're getting too complicated. I'm interested in what Jim, in terms of enforcement, what you think it would be a simpler approach to it, that, because you're the one that are looking at it, it may be the arborist or something, but what do you think in terms of enforcement? How will you approach it?
I mean, I like what you said as far as keeping it as simple as possible, because let's say, I've got it in my office right now, but let's say I issued between 75 and 100 tree permits last year. All right, even if 50% of those were a big group of trees rather than just one or two trees, we'd have to determine, okay, how many trees do we need to call the arborist in, or the homeowner has to call the arborist in. I don't think that all the homeowners, well, I think that they're gonna be up in the air over that, but beside that, whatever the council decides, that's gonna be a lot of business for the arborist, and the tree permitting process is really gonna be slowed down, especially during season. That's when everybody comes up, they wanna start cleaning up, cutting this and that. Right now, the tree work,
They'll need to start getting these arborists lined up now.
absolutely.
oh, yeah.
I'm just concerned there's not enough arborists for us to put that plan into action.
Has anybody thought about maybe asking an arborist to chime in on this?
Well, I have.
Yeah, I'm
I'm
in favor of it.
Like, you know, because the term is BMP, best management practices, I think that's where, you know, every industry has that, just like it's, you have to hire a soil scientist to get a septic permit, because every lot's different, every ground's different. You put the burden on them, we have unique situations with our building codes. You know, we give the option, or we require that contractor to give us an engineered letter. You know, again, it puts the burden on that professional. You know, when those situations arise, as Tony's kind of saying, if there's ever a discrepancy or concern, it does fall back on that licensed arborist.
But what we want to prevent is somebody moving in and saying, I don't have a view, I want to clear cut everything in my backyard.
And that
That's, and I know that happens all the time, you know, so that's what we gotta really address too.
They were talking about how the aesthetics can make property values go down or up. Well, having that great view makes your value go.
Sure.
I would like to make the neighbors have to go down.
Yeah, I mean, I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's when the buffer comes into play. I mean, I'd be happy to reach out to the arborists that I know and ask them, you know, but then again, it's up to the city what they
They
weigh
weigh in for us.
You know, I mean, obviously, they're not gonna do it for free. And Sharon, I'd like the name of that contact if you can figure it out across from you.
Yeah, I just have to look at the address on as well. So he didn't want me to cut a tree on his property.
And I realize we'll never have a perfect ordinance, but I agree, we do need to simplify this and make it workable and still keep whatever it is we want to keep in the city.
This, again, this caliber of trees, I think is, from what I've been reading, is the easiest way to do it. Brookhaven requires a minimum density of 130 inches per acre. City of Atlanta, they vary,
Canopy inches or what's your inches? Oh,
Tree
the
trunk.
diameter of the tree.
That's only 10 trees at 13 inches. That's not a lot of trees.
Oh, it's not.
no, and I'm not saying that that's the number we should use, I'm just saying this is how they do it. At City of Atlanta, in their R1 districts, which is the single-family residential, is 150 inches per acre.
Well, city residential, of course, mountain residential is two different
Two
things.
different-
We- I know
That's what I
the
say.
things of that.
It's the concept I'm
Yeah,
talking
it's
about, not the number.
Well, what Tony was talking about earlier, you know, the city got one big tree with a canopy. I'm sure at one point that was part of the forest, so somebody came in when those houses were built and cleared that area. I don't think it was just a pasture. I don't know, maybe it was.
It could, yeah.
Well, part of this was farmland up
Yeah,
here.
there were those areas up here.
Yeah, part of it was cattle ranch. Yeah,
But again, it, you know, what it was way back in the day, at this point, doesn't matter. It's what we want to, you know, maintain now.
I want my property to look like yours.
Yeah,
But I have to cut a lot of trees.
So, yeah, and that seems to be the easiest way to deal with it. You know, you've got 10 trees of trunks that are this big, add them up, and what have you got?
Yeah.
I mean, how simple is that?
It's a lot easier than,
And whether you use an arborist or Jim, they're gonna do the same thing.
or a mountain goat, like some of these places I can't get. to.
so that's what we would ask an arborist, what would be the ideal?
What would be the ideal
Once we
number?
decided what our criteria was.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, the arborist could help us come up with that.
Right,
Yeah, it could have-
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
No, I think that's a great idea.
So about 5 years from now, I think the ordinance will be ready for.
Depends on what the next meeting is.
we're just laying the groundwork
I
for
got
the
you, I
next
got you.
committee.
I got you.
Yeah, I was wondering if we need to do anything now.
Yeah, I mean, we do.
Because, yeah, I envision this take a good while
Oh,
to get this
Yeah,
thing.
it will, but we
Well,
want
let's put the arborist on the
But
speaker.
let's face it, we've been doing this for 10 years now.
You,
At
you've
least
been
I have.
involved very much in it for 10, at least, maybe even more, 10 years.
Well,
we
let's see,
get an
you've
arborist
been in the mayor for how long now? 5 years?
I'm on my 6th year.
You're on your 6th year.
I think I am, I don't know.
There, we had another mayor for 2 years prior to you,
Yeah,
and then Hugh Goodgame was here for 4 years. And it was him in his first term
yeah. So it's
that
over
got
10
me
years.
involved with this.
Yeah, it's over 10 years.
I wrote a letter to the city council 14 years ago about my property, because they were going to vastly change the tree ordinance, and there was such an uproar, because it was almost 100
Well,
degrees.
So this is your fault?
And just FYI, you know, the ordinances that we've got now, ordinance 1201, the 12 is 2012.
That's right.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
13 year.
so it's our first thing that we need to do is get an arborist and help us come up with the master
with these
plan
standards,
or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, with that.
we can, in the meanwhile, work on the Firewise stuff.
And what was some of the other things?
Well, the arborist was the second one,
The arborist was the second one, and we gonna,
the specimens and all that,
Fees, yeah, penalties.
you know, definitions, you know, working on definitions of specimen trees and that kind of thing, you know, we can do without an arborist.
You wanna look at the buffer?
I think we
Well, look
need
at that
to,
here.
we need to establish what a buffer, and,
Right,
you know, we say that there needs to be a buffer, but we haven't said what that consists of.
right.
So we can look at that.
And we're only talking about people cutting trees, correct? The people who have no trees, they're not gonna have to plant these.
No, you know, we're not gonna require that. However,
We need to talk about that.
we need to talk about, you know, if somebody's gonna build a house on a lot that has no trees.
Yeah.
You know, most cities at least at minimum require us what they call a street tree. That, you know, if you build a house, you gotta put a tree between your house and the street. So do we wanna consider that? Something to look at? And, you know, we haven't talked at all about, you know, we keep talking about what individual homeowners are gonna do, but we've got a lot of property around here, just in single family residential, you know, someday somebody's gonna build a hotel or a condominium or something like that, and, you know, this needs to address that as well.
We don't have anything in the ordinance about commercial or condo or whatever, plantings or anything, that's not in there, no, okay,
Now, other than the fact that that buffer needs to be
yeah,
between
the buffer.
residential and commercial, residential and anything else. Go through here and see what else
Well, until we come up with a plan, I would, because we need to talk about penalties, that was something else we talked about.
well, no, but, you know, since we're going on the
How
most
about
restrictive of
tree
the
trimming? What does it say in there about if I want to trim my tree?
Anything below 12 feet, you don't need a permit.
Okay,
Above that, you do. And as far as the canopy, I mean, it just, we discourage topping, and again, various people have different definitions, but you don't want to just go in and literally chop the tree off, you know, 20
Well, that's
feet.
one thing we tried to address with, it was actually an ordinance passed by the P and Z years ago that was about to go to this, it was passed to go to city council, and then there was an election, and we had a new city council, and the whole thing got tossed. But that did address topping trees.
was that before or after the fist fight?
Well, I wasn't part of any fist fights,
Okay,
nor was I chairman of the committee, by the way.
I know as far as the trimming and, you know, we called it brushing in the last meeting, I mean, that, I wholeheartedly, as a resident, agree with that. We need to clean up some of this. The canopy's one thing, but brushing down below where you can't even walk your property because.
right,
But again, you've got to take into consideration the native vegetation, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something that part of somebody can take on as one of the.
And
Part of that
Yeah.
gets addressed by the Firewise stuff.
Yes, there you go.
and how about defining what topping is? Because I remember at one of our meetings, they were talking about that too. Okay,
Yeah, we're trying to avoid hat racking a tree, which ultimately kills it.
Really, yeah, keep it simple. I mean, it's
Yeah, I-
pretty self-evident when you see the top's just been sliced off.
Yeah.
Rather than tapered. And that's where the arborist can say, look, this tree, you can do this, that tree, you can do that. I mean, like poplars. I'd rather have an oak tree, you know, 6 feet from my house than a poplar 15 feet from my house, because in a heavy wind, the poplars are just, they're hazardous.
yeah,
And they grow like weeds. I mean, they're beautiful in the fall, but, you know, everybody.
Yeah, they're
likes-
only marginally better than kudzu.
Well, yeah. And I've got a lot of poplars.
Yeah, those, and they're not even good for firewood.
what's the other tree that the roots go everywhere and they pop up? Oh, I've got several in my yard, I can't even think of it. And they-
Well, and that's where, you know, that kind of thing, if we're gonna get into what should be approved for tree replacement.
Yeah,
Poplar
Native
shouldn't be one of them.
species, yes.
Yeah.
You don't want the Bradford pear, which looks like a dogwood. They're beautiful, but they stink.
They stink, yeah.
And
They
they're
drop.
brittle.
Yes,
Yeah.
and a lot of people plant those because they grow
The
fast.
tree That's in my
Yeah,
yard.
that's
It's,
another-
they regret it
We put it
later.
about
Yeah,
2 weeks.
and again, the arborist
Can tell us.
can tell us what is an approved tree.
And have a list in
Mhm.
part of our ordinance, yeah.
Yeah.
It's that tree that comes up and it's good for fence posts because the wood doesn't rot, but they come up all over the yards and have stickers on them.
Locust.
I like
Yeah, locust.
locusts, that's
Locust.
the one. Yeah. I would.
One of these sheets I've got.
Good wood.
It's into
Huh?
that.
It's good wood.
Yeah,
Hard,
Hard.
good fence post.
yeah, it's good fence posts.
All right, we need to address, mitigation is one of the things, and again, that's, if mitigation is gonna improve replacement trees, what trees can be used?
That would be with the arborist too, right?
Yeah.
As per our planting zone, yeah. Okay. What are we? What planting zone are we in? Is it right there?
7,
9 or something?
7.
Something, yeah,
I
something.
thought it was like 6.5 or something like that.
6 2/3, yeah.
Sounds like a Harry Potter thing, doesn't it?
Well, and you look at the hemlocks around here, they're all dying of disease. It can be treated, but it's expensive.
Right.
I've seen some people with beautiful hemlocks, they say, yeah, I spent a fortune to keep it that way. Whereas a lot of people, they either can't afford it or they're not here. Same thing with the pines, the Norfolk pines and some of these other, the evergreens. There's some kind of pest that's just destroying,
I hope there's no Norfolk Island pines here.
not in Norfolk.
You know, Debbie Curtis took a bunch of people and they treated the hemlocks by the waterfall. And I think we got a grant to help pay for the mitigation,
Hmm.
whatever, doohickeys that they put, that's a tree term, they did to the trees.
Is there treatment to it?
Huh?
Yeah, I'd have to ask an arborist. I think there is. I mean, hemlock's absolutely.
Oh,
Right.
yeah, for that woolly Adele,
Yes.
yeah, they spray oil on it.
But you have to do it regularly and it's not cheap.
Yeah.
But I mean, just even our pine trees, our normal pine trees, they've been attacked, so. We've got to consider all these things that,
Especially about lightning.
as you get all these invasive species down south and they wreak havoc, and, you have to be careful that somebody doesn't bring something in from somewhere and say, hey, this looks great, nice, I think that's what caused this infestation in the pine trees here, somebody did something.
And kudzu. That's how we got kudzu written here.
Yeah, there's a lot of things out there that were planted with best intentions and.
Yeah. You wanna see the pictures of the armadillo from my yard yesterday? A few years ago, there weren't any. This thing
Yeah,
is
that's
this
right,
big.
yeah.
I had an armadillo in my own yard, I don't need yours.
I think he visited my driveway also. I think he was coming up towards your house, so I scooted him your way.
Another thing,
Back.
another thing we haven't addressed in here, and it gets, again, it goes to replacement trees, is where it can't be planted. And in one of these ordinances I was looking at, they stress that no tree may be planted within the visibility triangle of a street intersection or within 10 feet of the fire hydrant,
Right,
so.
or on the city right away.
Yeah, or on the
So-
city side of the
There's a
ditch,
safety issue.
Yeah.
or swell.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, if you
people
go
do it.
down Ponderosa, there are two huge evergreen trees that you cannot see around.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I came down 441 today and they are definitely they were starting to pave and do a bunch of stuff on 441. y'all.
So in other words,
It's
don't
here.
go there.
It's here. They're doing it.
If anybody cares, per the USDA, Georgia has 14,220,000 trees.
Who Canada does?
I'm sorry, 14,220,000,000 trees on 24.42 million acres.
Hmm.
So I did the math just for fun. That's 582 trees per acre. Which seems like a
Talking
lot.
about all of Georgia
All
or
of
the
Georgia.
state's property.
Dan, I think you need to get a line this one.
I would dearly love that.
But you gotta stay on this committee.
We need to define what tree removal is. All right, so
Next step.
next step, I said I would do the section on firewise, so I will do that.
I'm gonna set up a meeting with an arborist and maybe you and I can meet initially.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Or bring them to the next meeting as well, whatever you guys would like. It's, especially the guy in Dillard, I mentioned to him, we might need to pick his brain, and he says, hey, just give me a call.
So
So,
what do we do about paying the Arthur?
I was
Well,
just gonna,
that's-
I was just gonna ask, can we have a budget for that?
Oh, certainly.
well, even if it's for 1 hour, just,
Yeah,
and then we may determine, okay, we can't afford him or bring
we
him.
can afford it, can't we?
You better budget for 1 hour.
Budget man. Speak it,
We got it,
we got it.
we got it.
Y'all talk fast.
All right, so we're authorized to meet with them
59.5 minutes,
and at whatever cost.
yeah, at whatever cost.
We'll pay
All
him,
right.
pay him in trees.
We'll give them a free lunch.
Don, would you go through our existing ordinance and settle on things that we have addressed before that we really need to keep in there? That we absolutely don't want to throw away?
Okay, okay. Okay.
Yeah, you pretty much done it already.
Yeah.
You pretty much done it already.
Yeah, looking at your last email, but
Well, that addressed, what I addressed was the new issues that came up that we said we need to look at, and so I tried to address those, yeah.
yeah, no, you got a good start.
You know, every county, we have an extension agent, that might be a resource too. I know I had a fern in my yard that I thought was dying. And I called him, and he was, I keep thinking, of him, he was extremely helpful. He came and looked
A
at it.
fern?
I mean, a big, like a fern type tree. And all the needles were turning yellow and dying, and he just said that they just do that, but I thought the tree was dying, but just, you know, it might be a resource I could call.
So when you're reaching out to arborists, you might try the extension service and see if they have somebody that could join in.
Dan, you
I'll
want to
use
do
your
it
guy.
for the whole commission, or you want to just do a couple of you, how you want to do it? Or how y'all want to do it?
What's your question?
When we get an extension person and an arborist, do you want them to meet with you all as a whole, or just with representatives?
I think
or-
to start, let's just let them meet with Jim.
Yeah, just.
Or then maybe if one of the two, you know, one of the others want to join in, fine.
How about you, Dan? Would you want to do that too?
He's doing firewalls.
Cousins, extension, she's an
Let's put it this way. When you've got a meeting set up, let us all know when and where it is,
And whoever can
and
come.
anybody that wants to come can do.
There you
Except for the people that aren't here.
But wait, if it's a quorum, it has to be, does that not matter for them?
No, that only, if it's a council member.
Yeah, this is just a committee.
I hesitate to say this, but I don't have a part to pitch in. Is there something left that we need to?
Well, I'm sure there is, and we need to find you a job.
How about the term definitions? Would that fit under, Mr. Attorney over there, or? I saw that happy birthday, Dan and Donna both are. Well, how about Jim Pyburn or David Spears?
Do what?
Jim Phelps.
Phelps.
Yeah, him too.
I was gonna
Jim
say, what
Phelps.
happened to
Sorry, plywood. Plywood. I didn't.
I didn't recognize.
I
the
know
name.
there's gotta be a story for that, but I don't know what it is.
Somebody wrote an email
Plywood.
addressing, or mentioning Jim Plywood,
Yeah,
so that's.
said they had talked to our code enforcement officer, Mr. Plywood, and we thought that was appropriate.
And it's stuck ever since,
Yeah, yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah. You can call worse, so. let
Oh,
it
yeah.
Let's see here.
As chairman, why don't we decide what needs to be done and assign those to the committee members
That's
who
what
are
I'm
not
trying to
here.
Yeah.
Follow-up minutes.
All right, let me follow up on that. You know, there's additional things I think need to be addressed. I just can't think of them all right now. One thing you can do, I'll tell you what you can do. I'll give you. There's Brookhaven's ordinance.
Okay.
This information about,
And we have the Gainesville.
criteria for replace, this is all part of the Atlanta's ordinance, but it's a very small part of it. I would say, feel free to go online and look at other cities' ordinances
Okay.
as to,
Especially if they're mountainous ordinance, mountain
Islands
cities.
have anything?
I tried finding one in Islands, and they've got very little. Some of these cities, all they've got is an ordinance that addresses who can remove trees from city property, for example.
Vicky is not a city. It's not a city, it's actually just a master plan development.
So that's.
Where's it?
8,000 acres, 8,000 acres master plan development.
I was just trying to think of other mountain cities around here that might be comparable to what we look at.
Hiawassee, maybe?
Yeah,
That maybe that one. How about Tacoma?
I tried to find something from Tallulah.
Yeah.
And they had something that didn't really address, city or individual properties.
What's the color? Color, or,
Or maybe. Clayton doesn't have anything?
Clayton doesn't have anything.
Not that I've. Oh, excuse me.
No, I think that is the kind of thing I heard.
So they're the people that they're from the extension on.
Hall County does.
Oh.
Jason, do you know these people?
I can email you the
Okay.
link.
Here's more on Atlanta. Atlanta, by the way, maintains over 42% tree
Well, this
coverage.
John
Can't-
Joseph Benuto, it looks like he is the agriculture and natural resource guy, so maybe he's the one. There's his phone number too.
That wasn't the guy, any of those people you used, Jason? Or has that been a while?
It's been a minute.
By the way, as I was going through all this, we are also a tree city, correct?
We are,
9 years, I just put up the new signage last week.
Well, the signage is about the only thing we do that complies with.
we plant a tree too.
Yeah, look out the window.
There's
I have to.
four standards for recognition.
Uh-huh,
Form a tree board or department.
you're it.
Establish a tree care ordinance, which we're attempting. Maintain a community forestry program with an annual budget of at least $2 per capita.
Uh-huh,
And proclaim and observe Arbor Day. We do that.
we do that,
Do that.
I have to renew that every year.
yeah,
We do all that.
that's been around since before us.
Should we-
so.
Please don't pay that.
Tony,
Sure.
you're on.
Well, wait, set the next meeting date.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it's a good point. Is,
All set to go too.
God, it's almost March.
it is almost March. Oops. back here. All right, today being the 4th Tuesday.
Well, do y'all like 10 o'clock or 1 o'clock? Because
Not on court day.
Yeah, I was
That's
gonna
the
say
problem,
it's
court day, you know.
Yeah.
All right, let's start with that. Do you prefer morning meetings or afternoon meetings?
Morning.
Afternoon on court date. So.
No, forget about court date. Do you prefer morning or afternoon? Nobody cares.
Doesn't matter.
except for Sharon.
Okay, so look at
Morning's
March.
good.
Mornings are good, but then we have to get away from, is court date just once a month
Always on that
Yeah.
list.
on that last Tuesday?
Uh-huh.
So we could go
Is it last Tuesday?
the third Tuesday is city council, right?
March 18th, yes, that's the next meeting.
We could move to a Wednesday. Which, you know, we could do morning or afternoon.
I'm not here on Wednesdays. but I
Yeah, we
don't have to
got,
be.
got habitats,
Habitat's afternoon, right?
12 o'clock.
Oh, 12 o'clock, you're meeting earlier.
Do St. Patrick's Day, the 17th. Spring.
Wednesday.
Jason
That's
says,
on Thursday.
That's
Monday, the
27th.
17th.
Jason says, do it on St. Patrick's Day because it's green.
Yeah, Thursday, the
17th.
27th.
That's a Monday.
For those of us with any Irish blood, that's a national holiday.
I know it.
I'm off on Monday, I don't know if it matters.
I have no problem with Mondays.
Okay, so let's see.
Well, what's wrong with court day Tuesdays in the afternoon?
I have nothing, if that's what you prefer,
Everybody's here.
Yeah. So that would be
except for
the,
two of us.
that would be the 24th. No, the
No,
25th.
it'd be 25th.
Isn't that when
25th.
we're doing our thing? When are we doing our thing?
25th,
Looking at the
Mark,
14th.
The 14th. Why do I have that on the 25th?
I don't know why.
Oh,
All
I'm
right,
looking at February. Duh.
March 25th, good for everybody?
Yeah.
At 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock?
Okay.
if it's like today's meeting, I'm off, but it's fine, because I didn't do anything other than start the show.
Just zoom in.
Okay, so we're there.
Okay. All right. Mr. Allred.
It's a beautiful time of day.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
I was waiting for something,
Yeah,
something more eloquent.
yeah, I'll work on it.
All in favor?
Uh,
Aye. Thank you.
All right, now let me ask you something.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, you want me to look at the